You're listening to the Swap Society podcast, and I'm your host, Nicole Robertson. I interview thought leaders and change makers who are working to create a more sustainable and equitable world through fashion, art, and activism. Join us for a dose of climate optimism as we envision a brighter future. Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Swap Society podcast. Today, I'm talking with Lieve Vanrusselt, the head of business development, and Chris Newton, the head of sales and marketing of Matoha, the maker of Fabritell, a fabrics identification device. Hello, Lieve and Chris. Thank you for being on the show.
Hi, Hello, Nicole. Pleasure.
So, where are you talking to us from today, and where are you from originally?
We're talking to you from London. Myself, and originally I am from Belgium, and I'm Flemish.
And I'm in sunny Wales, right in the middle, in the countryside. And I'm originally from a place called Blackpool, which is in the north of England. So I've been here about 10 years now. It's a nice change.
All right. Please tell us a bit about your backgrounds and how you came to work with Matoha.
So my background is in chemical engineering. So a long time ago, I graduated as a chemical engineer in Belgium, in Leuven, and I've worked in the industry, pharmaceutical and gas and oil industry. And after that, I've done quite a few things. I've taught maths, and I also always was, involved with innovation and product design. So I met the founders of Matoha through my time at the Royal College of Art in London, where I did industrial design engineering as a master's. And so I was connected with Imperial College, and a few years after I met the founders of Matoha, who were basically focusing on trying to make a plastic identification instrument that would be affordable and, of course, accurate, but more focused on, I would say, smaller sorting activities. So either sorting companies or even sorting your plastics at home. And they were also looking at sorting plastics in the developing world. So they wanted to make a technology that was affordable, basically. So I really liked that idea. And we just sat together and worked on it a few years. And then I got involved with some investments in the textile industry and actually on sustainability in the textile industry with another few projects. And I came back to them and asked, could we actually apply this for textiles? And so we got to work on that. And now, I work with them on it to make it grow. And we're very much convinced that that's, one of the big areas we want to work in. And,
you're like our biggest cheerleader, aren't you, Lieve?
I'm quite a big cheerleader, yes, on this, because I really believe in the recycling of textiles to get rid of the whole waste heap we have created. And there has to be a way. And these recycling technologies, are really gaining place in the world. So we want to be there when they need our input to those processes. So that's a little bit my story. Chris, up to you.
How about you, Chris?
I came from a different route. I started litter picking when I was 13. I'm now much older than that. But I won't say how old. But
just a couple of years older. You're like 15, 16, yeah?
Yeah, that's fine. I like that. But a bit older maybe than that. And then, so I got into recycling and litter picking. That was my sort of in. And I started doing event recycling. And then I really just got into the plastics industry. And I actually bought a Matoha plastics device. Loved it. And then I had to chase the director on LinkedIn to get him to phone me. I had to pretend that I had to send him a message saying, you need to phone me. I made it sound very serious. And then he phoned me. And I said, I love your machine, which he was quite surprised, I think. And I said, I want to come and help you get it out there and spread the word about it. And, and then a year later, basically, I joined the company, is the short story of the next bit.
Yeah.
So, we developed the plastics, and then I've come on to do the textiles and the fabrics. That's it really. Yeah, that's how I got here, and I'm loving it really.
So Chris, how did you get into litter picking? How did that all start? You were young. Was it to kind of collect for the refunds, or was it environmental? What was the inspiration there?
Where I live, where I'm from originally, in Blackpool, they have a big golf tournament. The Open Golf, it's like the biggest golf tournament. Every 4 years it comes around. And my school, they said, do your kids from your school want to litter pick and we'll pay them, like, I can't remember now, maybe £4 an hour. And me and all my mates did it. And we, to be honest, we just went and we stole golf balls and we had fun and we just, but it was a really nice time, you know, and it just stuck with me, that little bit of litter. And then as I grew, I ended up doing an environmental sustainability degree at university, and I got a job working more events. And I don't know, just recycling just became my thing really. And then, and here I am, aged 16, and still recycling.
Still recycling. Yeah. You know, I heard this term a few times recently. I mean, it's not a new one. Landfill mining. And I love it because I think you were a very early landfill miner, Chris.
Well, you know, I've been so into, I mean, in the UK, I don't know what it's like in America, but they do this thing called bin diving, where they don't do it so much anymore, but the supermarkets used to throw out all their food. You know, I was only 16. And we used to do, I mean, I met my partner now. I met her, and the next day I went around to speak to her, and I actually found some flowers in the bin, and I took them around to our house and gave them. And now we have 2 children, so recycling is good.
I am a dumpster diver myself. I am always, you know, well, here in Los Angeles, it's not really diving into the dumpster so much as just pulling over on the side of the road and grabbing something really amazing off the street. You know, I'm always trying to kind of keep things in circulation as long as possible, especially if it's really great. I mean, I even found on the side of the road a pre-Civil War antique wooden chest that somebody had put out for the trash. You know, I mean, you never know what you're going to find.
Yeah.
Can I just imagine LA, there's lots of like famous people leaving stuff on the streets and all sorts of things. Is it like that? Like
sometimes it depends on the neighborhood.
Okay, yeah.
Those are probably more the gated communities. So, you know, their dumpsters probably aren't as accessible. But, you know, people just throw things out on the street all the time. We have, I don't know if it's big in Europe, but here, at least in my community, I'm very involved in the local Buy Nothing group, which is, you know, where you just give things freely to your neighbors and receive things freely from your neighbors. And, you know, just to kind of keep things going, because the reality is that, you know, recycling has its place, right? But obviously that's also not enough. And we can talk more about that as well. But, you know, I think that reuse really should come before recycling as much as possible. And kind of on that note, and you did mention that, so Matoha really started with more of like plastics identification. Can it identify all types of plastics? Can it identify bioplastics, for example?
So, for example, a bioplastic is often a plastic, like, for example, it's just a really easy one, like a PET bottle that your Coca-Cola bottle would be made out of. I mean, if currently you make that out of fossil fuels. If you make that out of, say, a bioplastics, like potato starch or whatever it's made out of, it's still the same plastic. So it can't actually differentiate between them two. Because the way the scanner works, it shines in its simplest form. It shines light on it. It then detects the reflection or the absorption of that light, and it creates a wavelength on the screen or for the computer to read. And so that the chemical signature, let's call it, is the same for the bioplastics and the fossil fuel plastics. So for that, it's not so good. And there is an issue sometimes with these bioplastics about them contaminating the other plastics, and whether they process well together is sometimes not well known, you know. And some yeah, so it's complex. The plastics industry is very complex. Well, I thought the plastics industry was very complex, and then I started learning about the textiles industry, and then I was like, oh, plastics industry is very simple, really. So
Yeah.
that was the thing. But back on to what you're saying about reuse, reuse is very important, and we've got things called free cycle in the UK, which is people offering and swapping things, and then like community hubs where you can borrow a drill for an hour or 2 days and things like that, which is all great. And I think we'll come on to this. One of the problems with the textiles industry, I don't know if you've noticed, have you ever been to a clothes swap, Nicole?
Oh, absolutely. And we've hosted them, and, we're an online clothing swap. So yeah, we're very familiar with the process.
And I went to, my friend ran a clothing swap, and I loved it. People came, there was loads of clothes there. People had dropped early so they could be sorted. And people came, and it was like, I don't know, ants or hyenas diving in, and hyenas probably a better analogy. And they dive in, and they were there for 4 or 5 hours. And then at the end, though, there was still lots of clothes left, almost as many, So, and this is these clothes can go round and round, but eventually there's going to have to be some recycling, or what do we do with these clothes that have reached the end of their useful life? And there's maybe processing, or before recycling, there's repairing maybe, or people who cut them into little squares and sew them together. I love all that sort of stuff. But these are serious questions in the textile industry. What happens?
Yeah, and I feel that there's a big movement, actually, if we look, it's almost like it's linked with COVID, but I don't know if it is. But like brands really are feeling responsible for what they have created in the past. The export to lots of, to Ghana and other countries that actually received all those clothes that we didn't want anymore, and it was labeled as secondhand, but actually 40% of it is actual waste. So I really feel it's their responsibility to start cleaning this up, and it's possible. It is possible to clean it up. So
there's just been a big deal, hasn't there? Who was that? Was it the All Foundation and a big online retailer? There's something like 20 million. I can't remember the figures now.
Yes, Shane, or the Chinese brand. So they are sponsoring that foundation in Ghana. So I really hope,
and Liz Ricketts is the person who runs that. Yeah, and they're doing incredible work. And so having that investment, I think, is going to have just a really massive impact there.
Yeah, I hope so too. I really hope.
They're a great organization. We had a chat with them, and some of the stuff they were doing, but they really highlighted the problem. The plastics industry, I always think, is like 10 years ahead on recycling, and maybe 10 years ahead in public perception.
Yes.
The textile industry is getting a free ride almost on reuse. People take their stuff to the charity shop, and you feel good. You've done your bit, you've given it, but so much of that stuff is now being exported. And then when it's getting exported, it's not getting recycled, or it's not even being recycled as effectively as it could be. Once it gets there, there's almost so much, and they've got the technical the skills themselves and the technical skills, but they haven't got the investment. There's a level of machine, and not just ours, like just balers and vehicles and things like this to move stuff around.
Yeah, and then there's a recycling technology itself that's really getting from pilot to commercial stage, and I think we still need to give that 2 to 3 years. But I think it's an ideal time frame or gap for brands to start really changing their whole supply chain, or their whole method of making and selling clothes. So they need to really now take back schemes, make sure there are companies that organize it for them in the background. As for instance, we have a nice local startup here. It's called Reskinned. And they do that, for every brand in the background, take back, reuse, recycle. There's no excuse anymore, really. They can have it. It can happen. So hopefully it does.
So from your perspective, what are the biggest challenges currently when it comes to textile recycling?
From our point of view, it's the blends that people are using in the fabrics, so at the moment our machine can identify 2 different materials quite effectively in many cases, but as soon as you take that to 3 different materials or 4 different materials, it becomes very hard. So trying to keep some of these materials that people are using simple so they are more recyclable, I mean, that is quite important. Even taking elastane out of some of the materials as well, because elastane is often very difficult to find, and people, so for example, it's in jeans and cotton, so it makes these jeans much less recyclable. So if we could just remove the elastane or make it easy to identify, then that could help drive recycling. Just these simple things. Yeah, and maybe some sort of cotton elastic, cotton spandex. So like maybe changing. I don't know. That's well out of my. But in a dream, that would help make things better.
And I think Europe is quite, quite active in that front. They have directives they've written for 2025, 2030. And one of them is definitely looking at the design stage of a garment. And that will involve, absence of elastane, only, blends that maximum have 2 elements. All this will contribute. There's quite a lot of activity around that. But as I said before, this will take a few years' time. So, but the good thing is, it is going. It is really on the road. You can see it. And I think a design stage being very clear on what the envelope is, what designers can use with the aim of recycling the garment at the end of life is possible. It is possible. They just this awareness needs to grow now, and the processes need to come, into action. And then sorters need to be there. And that's where we are at the very beginning, to make sure that input is there for those processes, because otherwise they need a minimum input. So there's a little bit of a struggle for the recycling processes that are already happening, that they don't have enough input.
Yeah. So at the beginning of the recycling journey of textiles, a recycling sorter will have a big pile of clothes of different materials, maybe polyester, cotton, wool, acrylic. And there's no magic machine that can just take that and turn it into new clothes. Somebody has got to organize that. The key to recycling is to know what you've got, first of all. So somebody's got to sort that out, or a machine has got to sort it out. But the technology, our tech can do this, but there's no magic machine. I think for maybe 5 to 10 years, people have been waiting for somebody to invent this magic machine that will just take clothes from here, turn them into new clothes here. But actually, the bit in between, there's a lot of work there. There's a lot of processing. There's a lot of knowledge to be learned. And the will is slowly becoming there. I don't think the public are quite putting enough pressure on businesses as they do in the plastics industry, for example. So there's probably something about changing the public perception about textiles and making them realise sort of what the problem is and how big a problem it is. Yeah. So but we are solving that middle bit. Things like chemical recycling is becoming much more advanced. Identification technology is becoming much more advanced, and even just collection and sorting. It's going okay. It's getting there. We'll get there slowly.
And I feel that it has to come from both sides. The customer awareness needs to push, and say, I don't want this item with 3 components anymore. I'm not buying it. So that awareness, like Chris is saying, is already in plastics, because I think people know that PET is perfectly recyclable. So they probably will. I feel that there's more awareness on that over the last so many years. And then also laws and rules and directives. So hopefully those 2 pushing in that middle bit should have some effect. And then with technology, with sorting, we've looked at a few. There's also more automatic sorting compared to ours, because you have the question also, how does Fabritell work and what fabrics and so can it identify? So technology-wise, we're probably all quite similar. I think we focus a lot on textiles. A lot of the others focus on plastics, toxic elements, humidity. So we we chose to focus on plastics and textiles. So we're very focused on that. But still, with textile, there's a lot of, human involvement, because you have a lot of garments that are non-uniform. For instance, typical hoodie is very non-uniform, outside cotton, inside polyester. So try and put that in one of the recycling streams, because, it's a 50-50, basically. Black color, it's not detectable when it's using carbon black. Zips and buttons, and if you want to sort at the very start of the waste chain and let a small sorting company catch quite a good value, you need to have affordable technology, and that's where we want to be.
What are the fabrics that Fabritell can identify?
So cotton, polyester, acrylic, wool. I should really give you examples of things. So often many t-shirts are made out of cotton, polyester, same.
All pures, really, yeah?
Pures, yeah. So anything pure we can identify. I forgot acrylic, whatever I said.
Yeah. I think we're almost there. Nylon, polyamide.
What about things like rayon and viscose?
Rayon and that would be under viscose. I think we have to be aware, and that's due to technology. There is an error range, of course, but if I then speak to weavers and try and find, I ask them, how do you know when you weave a fabric that's a composition? And they say, oh, but we have an error range. And I think, oh, there you go. So they have an error range. We will have an error range. So I think, looking at the technology, it's almost like you have to, use it relatively. So for instance, with the chemical recycling process, let's say, that does polycottons, you want at least 20% of a component in there. For instance, 80-20, 60-40 works really well to identify. If you go to 10-90, it becomes shaky because you have that error range. And so that's what, again, operating envelope, design envelope. Designers need to be aware that if they choose a polycotton, they shouldn't go for 10-90, they should go for 30-60 or 35-65, because then they know this can go through the recycling process. So, and with our device, we can set specifications, like we say, okay, we have this light system that the operator can put, for instance, green light as a little LED that says, okay, you are, when it's above 35% polyester, it's good. So we can put it at 35 or 30 or 45, and we know that within the error range, we're safe. And I feel very much that's how the technology should be used.
It's designed to sort of augment existing sorting lines at the moment, so people can see the value, they can quickly implement it, try it, and get the valuable materials out. So a lot of customers are using it to check cotton and make sure they're pulling all the cotton out, because there's a big demand for recycled cotton.
Yes.
Same with, and there's other customers that are feeding chemical recycling, so they're taking the polyester, and so they just want a certain level of polyester, as Lieve said. So they are just green light, yes, it's suitable for the process, and just passing it over there, and it's quickly, they can quickly integrate it, and they can sort just as fast as they were before. Because there are alternative technologies like FTIR chemical testing. Chemical testing is just not possible. FTIR takes a long time, it takes 30 seconds per reading, takes a lot of preparation. So NIR is quick, simple identification of materials.
And chemical analysis is expensive, so
I'm
expensive.
sure.
It takes a long time.
Yeah, I mean, I think that it's must make the process so much easier for sorting, because if you don't have this, scanning technology and you're trying to sort, I mean, are people trying to find the tags sewn into the garment? I mean, for sorters that don't have this tech yet, how have they been doing it?
Tags are not reliable. There have been done studies with chemical analysis backed up. and showing that 40% of labels are incorrect. So that was a very a surprise for us, but we suspected that already. So try then to make a sample database with your technology. So you need to have that chemical analysis next to it, because you need to be sure that what you have and put in your system is reliable. So I've been working a lot on that, investing quite a bit of money in it to get reliable samples. And then, of course, in India, the experience is very different. You know, they have been sorting for years, and mostly women can judge by feeling the fabric what it actually is. But then again, they have come to us as well because they want to train their people. You know, new people into that business need to know what they're actually, you know, feeling, so they can double check with the technology.
And the quality control for them. And, you know, it's sometimes very difficult to tell what a material is. They can like test it and look at it, but they might not be 100% sure what it is. So I should add as well, labels aren't always in clothes. I mean, my daughter, I saw her with some scissors and a jumper. I was like, what are you doing? She was cutting the label off her jumper, you know, and apparently that's quite common. I've never done that. But you look in some of the recycling piles and you find out there's no labels, they've been removed.
You know, if I'm honest, I sometimes do the same because it's sometimes irritating.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It can be irritating your skin.
Yeah, I mean, for us at our swap, you know, we encounter this as well. A lot of garments are missing the tags. And so we accept all brands, even garments missing the tags, because for us, we're just trying to keep that wearable garment in circulation.
Okay.
And so we list it as unknown on the site, but that also happens with fabric indications. So we don't have a fancy Matoha scanner. We're actually, you know, our team is actually looking at the label to see what the fabrics are so that it can be listed on the site, you know, what the materials are. But sometimes we just don't know. And same thing, people on the team will sometimes say, oh, it doesn't have a fabric label, but it feels like poly or something like that. But yes, absolutely. People do cut out the tags often. It's very common. Yeah.
I bet it's quite frustrating actually for you because it can change the value of an item quite significantly, I bet.
Well, you know, what we do is we created an alternative currency called Swapcoin that gives multidimensional value to every garment. And so if we don't know, so everything ordered from our site is Swapcoin plus $5.99. So we are not like typical resale where the value of the garment fluctuates. And if it's a high-end designer, we charge more for it, like a traditional resale. We're agnostic to the actual value of the garment itself. We're saying, okay, we're providing this service to our members. And so they pay a flat fee for everything. And the value of each garment is actually in Swapcoin. And so what that does is it makes every swap super fair. People get equal value out for what they send in. And yes, obviously we look at the brand and original retail value, but we're also looking at, you know, various levels of condition and season. And, you know, so there are all of these different factors that go into the algorithm that determines the value of each garment. And so it really, it kind of just, I think, levels the field a little bit for people. And then they also know that, you know, they feel confident sending in their fancier items, but then if it's unknown and we don't know what it is, it just doesn't get as much swap coin. So you can still swap it. You'll still get some value for it, but you won't get as much as if it still had the label. So that's how ours.
Interesting.
It's a nice model. Yeah.
But in relation to recycling, what do you do with do you get clothes that come in that are not suitable for resale? We do. We're still at a small scale. So, you know, we actually work with local designers, for example, who will upcycle fabric, you know, a silk blouse with armpit stains, you know, they'll just cut around the stain and repurpose the fabric. We also work with some different charities,
where, the clothes are still wearable, but they're not good enough for our site and that sort of thing. So we do some sorting, but obviously it's in our minds that as we scale, we're going to need bigger solutions, because the reality is that we do get a lot of garments that are not in good enough condition for us. We do allow things that have a minor imperfection. They're noted as imperfect. They get a pretty big deduction in the swap coin value. A missing button, a pull at the seam, a small stain or snag or something like that. But if it's a garment that has, more problems than that, we are kind of passing it along. As we get bigger, we're going to have to think about, more solutions and what we're doing. But right now, we're really just working within our local community. We're based in Los Angeles. It's a big enough city that we have enough kind of ways to kind of pass it on. We're not throwing anything in the trash, but we also serve the whole United States. So we have people sending us their clothes from all over the country.
Okay.
Yeah.
So one of the things that you've just highlighted there is a lot of these textile recycling systems, they work really well on a small scale with connections and people who are really into the movement. It's when you get to that next level up, is how do you scale these ideas? How do you make it work on a larger audience? Because that's what it's got to do. To get to some of the recycling rates, we're going to work out how to scale, or how even to connect all these people, because there are a lot of people interested, and a lot of textile fabric people who want these throw-offs, basically, and they want to do something with them. But so
it's almost like you have to link communities, isn't it? Like you work with, I don't know, 100 communities over the US, and you there's one overviewing, but it's like, so people need to know that they don't have to, I don't know, if they want to bring it to you for swapping, that they don't need to travel 200 kilometers or,
Yeah, I mean, we're trying to make it as easy as possible for the consumer. And also we're kind of doing all of the work, right? So it's not people trying to sell their clothes online on their own, which can be very time consuming, and not everything sells. And it's, so I think that the ease of use is something that we focus on. And then also kind of that value and fairness. But absolutely, I mean, I think that, and we're also spending a lot of our time trying to educate consumers as well on all of these issues, because it is all very complex. It's not just, I don't want to wear this anymore, so I'm going to donate it to my local charity shop and move on with my life. It's like, well, it creates this ripple effect, in other places in the world. And so, we're doing what we can to help tackle this problem. But as you know, it is a massive problem, which brings me to my next question, which is recycling rates in general tend to be quite low. What are current textile recycling rates?
Yes, I mean, it differs a little bit from country to country.
Sure.
I've always, for the UK, for instance, I'm looking here because I have a few figures, but that's the RAP report of 2019, which says that recycling is 3%. And of that 3%, they don't really even mention that it goes back into clothing. Yeah. So it goes into wipes, insulation, acoustics, kind of felt type, non-wovens. Yeah. And then globally, I think they talk about, for instance, a figure from 2015, we're talking about the same kind of percentage. I think globally, less than 1% of clothing material is recycled in the clothing industry. So that's not a lot, isn't it? Another figure which I always quite like to remember, estimated 92 million tons of textile waste produced each year, which means this is equivalent to a rubbish truck full of clothes ending up on landfill sites every second. So that's quite an illustration, isn't it?
Yeah, we talk about that stat a lot. Every second, a garbage truck of textiles is landfilled or incinerated. I mean, it just boggles the mind to think about that sheer volume. And
the textile industry as well, that has an issue. There is a post-consumer textiles and then post-industrial, where the manufacturing of textiles. So it's hard to drill down to the stats and where they've got all the information from. I suspect a lot of that recycled is actually the post-manufacturing. It's not the post-consumer.
Not post-consumer. Yes, you're right. So when we talk about recycling rates, what's in that percentage, right? What's in there? It could be post-industrial and not post-consumer. So it's you see many figures, but I think we need to say it's definitely less than 3% that goes back into clothing. That includes post-industrial.
So it seems like a device like Fabritell is particularly useful in post-consumer, right? Because obviously, if it's on the cutting room floor of a factory, they know what that material is. So sorting is probably a bit easier. But there's so much post-consumer textile waste out there. How do you envision, something like Fabritell kind of helping to increase recycling rates for textiles?
I mean, there's a number of ways that the Fabritell is used and can be used. I'd like to take it down to the people as much as possible in my dream world of having a Fabritell in shops. So when people return their clothes to shops, that they can immediately identify and almost use a smart bin to put it in the. That's how I'd love to see it being used.
Interesting.
So it really is people have a real sort of visceral knowledge of what's in their clothes and where it's going. So in my dream world, that's what I'd like to see it being used. But at the moment, I think we're really at the sorting level. People are still, and it's great, they're putting their material into textile banks. The charity shops are selling them to the sorters. And the sorters, and at that level, that's where we sort of are at the moment, where the sorters, and at the moment, they're pulling out the most valuable stuff. And I think that is great because they're learning slowly that there's value in this material. They don't just have to bag it, bale it, and send it off. They can take some of the valuable material. I mean, they're still bagging and baling the things that are left. But as that progresses and as the industry develops, there'll be more and more value in different segments of this. And you can and the great thing about Fabritell is you can add another unit. If you see a material stream that has value, you can hire another member of staff, buy another unit, and then start sorting for that. You can sort 300 kilos a day, an hour. Sorry, not a day. 300 kilograms an hour, and that was simple testing we've done. So I mean, and that's doing multiple materials. So if you're just doing a single material, you can go much faster. And there's real value there, especially with some of the materials there's a shortage of. Yeah, and so I just hope that the industry develops. It's going the right way. I think showing people the technology will help bring investment in, which will help things grow, which will, it'll be that sort of ever expanding circle, hopefully.
Yeah. I think what Chris is saying is very valid. I think, with the plastic bottles, the reverse vending machines and all this, I think customers are getting aware, and it would be nice if they could see that we actually could do similar things with textiles or clothes they bring to the charity shop. At the moment, what I wanted to add to the sorter is also we have a few chemical recyclers that actually have put our instruments at their suppliers, at their sorters from which they take material for their process. So it's a way of quality control of the batches that are coming in. So they are actually supervising a number of instruments that they have placed with their suppliers. So they know that, when they come with a batch, that batch has a code, a QR code, and they can see through the data cloud what was actually the statistics of your batch. Is it pure, whatever they want? Is it that composition? Is that the range? And that's what they need for their process. So I see a lot of future in that because small sorters can connect maybe to bigger collection and then go to the recyclers. And the whole transparency of giving a batch a name or a code can help in the whole, brand requirement of saying, look, we are working sustainably. We know exactly where that cotton batch comes from. You can trace it all the way back. We have sorted it. It has gone into recycling. So we're playing a lot with that data transfer as well, and identification of batches. So there's a lot of that as well in our app. We use the app for that.
Oh, very cool. Yeah, hopefully between a change in consumer behavior, a change in corporate behavior, improved use of technology and kind of, evolving technologies, we can try to get a handle on this crazy textile waste situation. So, obviously we're talking a lot about the problems and the challenges. And so I always like to circle it back to a little fashion love story, because obviously we all wear clothes, right? And even if you don't consider yourself to be a fashion person, everybody wears clothing. So I have to ask, do you have a favorite piece of clothing in your closet, and what is it and why? What do you love about it?
Chris, you have the honor.
I actually have mine with me here.
Oh, great.
Oh, I'm very curious what he's going to come up with.
It's just a T-shirt. But it's actually created by a podcaster. Oh. And it's got a French Revolution vision diagram on it.
Awesome.
Awesome. But I've listened to this man's podcast for the last 6 years. It's a history podcast, and he did a fundraiser. And every time he does a fundraiser, I buy some of the stuff, and there was T-shirts. So I bought some T-shirts, and I still listen to his podcast now. Revolutions, if anybody is this,
okay.
cares. But and it's just a history podcast, but it's just really, and I really enjoy wearing the T-shirt. But I'm still, to this day, I wear it in the hope that somebody will come up to me and be like, "Oh, I listened to that podcast too." and I've had the T-shirt 5 years and nobody has yet to do that.
T-shirts are so great for that, isn't it?
Yeah,
they make connections. They make connections. When you're traveling, sometimes you say, "Oh, wow, I've been there, or I was there as well."
I like that band, isn't it? That sort of thing.
Yeah.
It's sort of the next evolution of bands, a bit more niche, a podcast T-shirt.
Yeah, for sure. How about you,
Maybe
Lieve?
you should do a podcast T-shirt, Nicole.
Well, if I did a podcast T-shirt, they would all be secondhand, and we would probably just like
podcast T-shirt. Yeah.
We would
lots
have
of
to
swap coins.
screen over an old shirt. There are some companies that are doing that, where they're sourcing secondhand blanks for people to buy instead of brand new. But
okay.
How about you, Lieve? Do you have a favorite item of clothing?
Yeah, well, I was really thinking hard about your question. I have a jeans that's so old that if I don't know what to wear, that's the one I wear. It's been there for years, really years. And I really would be so upset if there would be, I don't know, a tear or so I really like that one. But then I was also thinking there's one piece of clothing that I cannot, give away. And that's when I was pregnant with my first child. And I just love it. It's this nice thing. I mean, if I would wear it now, it would be so silly. I would be very wide and broad, but it's so nice. It's with flowers, and I cannot give it away. I need to. I will hold on to it, and then whenever I'm not here anymore, my kids have to do it away with.
Why don't you get it tailored into something you could wear now?
But then it's not the same. It's not the same model. It's different.
Yeah, fair.
So it's in my cupboard, and it has done a few moves and still there. Yeah. So that's probably.
It's funny. I've been swapping for a long time, and so I really don't have a lot of attachment to individual items, but I do have a few things that are really special to me that I really love that I keep. But I do have, and it's so silly, but I have this puffer jacket from my second son that he wore that, I don't know, I keep meaning to put it in the swap, and every time I go to put it in the swap, and I know someone else with a kid could totally use it, but I just kind of like to just kind of hug it, and it's just, I remember him at that kind of squishy little young age, and it's completely illogical, but I haven't been able to part with it yet. And he's only 6 now, so it's not even like, oh, he's grown, and it's like, I don't know. I haven't been able to get rid of it.
That's acceptable. I mean, Matt, I've got a daughter. I've got 2 daughters, but the one, we've got some friends with children the same age, and we give them her clothes. And I do find it a bit disconcerting seeing them wearing her clothes. I almost regret giving them away, especially so close.
Yeah.
Sort of, my child's grown now, and it's so sad.
It's we have this with school uniforms here in England. I still have the little blazers from when they were in primary school. I'm sorry, I cannot, they're still there. And I think, whenever they leave the house, I will give it to them, and they can then, they won't like it.
What are you giving me this for, Mum?
Why? Oh, that's so funny. Yeah. So what's inspiring you right now? Is there anything in particular, any books or art or?
I mean, I am a big fan of AI. I actually read quite a lot of science fiction. And this thing we were talking about connecting people, this small scale to the larger, I think there's a real scope for AI and computers to really take over that side of things and crunch the numbers and make things move efficiently and really drive the circular economy. I think it's a long way off doing that, but I'm positive about that for the future. With obviously some scary undertones there, maybe. I don't know if I'm ready for an AI-controlled government.
Oh, wow.
But, it can drive circularity, definitely.
Mm. Yeah. For me, I'm very involved with charity work as well. So next to my Matoha work, I'm all on charity, and that's more education and focus in Africa. I work quite a bit on education in Congo, and I recently went to Ethiopia. Well, I came back this week, so lots of very interesting educational projects for which I will do my very, very best to find funding for. So it will be tough, but I'm very motivated. So
just give a quick shout out as well, actually, to a hashtag on Instagram, What's in My Clothes, which was by, what was it? It was
Fashion Revolution.
Fashion Revolution, yeah. I like that. I mean, it was very good for our brand, obviously, What's in My Clothes, because we can tell you that. But I followed the hashtag, and there was a lot of good posts from designers and people. That was a really interesting. So I find Instagram's really good for the quirky and the new and the innovative. I've seen a lot of interesting people on there doing interesting things, which I find really motivates me. You say, it's not just me. There's a network of people.
Exactly, right? That there are other people working to solve these problems, which is a big part of why I'm even doing this podcast as well.
Yeah.
But, to talk about Fashion Revolution, so we've collaborated with them on some different things over the years. And, initially their hashtag was Who Made My Clothes, which was really a focus on the people behind the clothing and how they got started after the Rana Plaza tragedy a few years back.
Yeah.
But, as an organization that's really working to educate people and spread awareness, they recently started doing What's in My Clothes. And I think it is good to really get people thinking about that, not just who made them, which is obviously very important, but what is it made of and what are the impacts of that, of different fibers, et cetera. And so I'm glad you mentioned that.
Okay, it's interesting. I do find it inspiring. And as soon as I saw it, I was like, it's like the hashtag I've been waiting for.
Mm-hmm. And it kind of gets into my last and final question, which is really, what's keeping you optimistic? And it sounds like maybe some of these same things that are also inspiring you are keeping you optimistic about the future.
Yeah, I mean, I am optimistic about the future. I mean, I'm really optimistic about, not to go too over the top, but about our company and what we're doing. And we're still so at the beginning, but we're working really hard, and we're getting great feedback, and waking up in the morning and doing my job, I'm enjoying, and I really see that we're doing something positive, and that's enough for me. And my kids,
Mm-hmm.
I find them
important,
they're so full
Daddy.
of life.
Yes. Yeah.
But they're just so full of life, they're not scared of the future. They're just having fun, enjoying themselves, smiling, and that's enough. That's good.
Yeah. And I feel optimistic. The same reason as you, Chris. I think we're in a nice, area to make change. And I feel like people like you, Nicole, and so many others are trying to get to that same goal. And I think that's what makes me optimistic, especially the last 2 years. It feels like really odd, but during COVID, we suddenly got really flooded, is maybe a big word, but we got so much interest suddenly from, company sorters and all kind of parties about recycling. And I think people, I know it has been really, really difficult, COVID, but I think there really was an awareness of, what do I have in my wardrobe? I have so much stuff here. Why do you have that stuff? And I think there was an awareness, and I see it with my children are older. They go now, since a few years, they definitely go to secondhand shops. That makes me really happy. I think there's a lot of work still to be done. And I hope that if companies now realize that fast fashion needs to change, and I think there will be pressure to do that, it makes me optimistic, because I think we can really try and solve this.
Wonderful. So how can people find you?
Probably the best way, the two best ways are social media. So LinkedIn and Instagram are the easiest. Matoha and Matoha. Or you find me, Chris Newton, on both of them.
And our website.
Email as well. We've got a website. My email is chris@matoha.com. Our website, www.matoha.com.
Yeah.
Any of those ways. If you go to the contact form, fill out the contact form, and I'll get back to you straight away.
Fantastic. And we'll link to that in the show notes as well, so to make it easy for people to find the link. Wonderful.
Perfect.
Well, thank you both so much for taking the time to talk with me today. It was really great learning about both of you, and also the really cool technology that you're working on.
No, great. Thanks for having us.
Yeah, thank you very much.
To hear about your project.
Yes.
Thank you. Well, thank you again. I hope you have a wonderful day. Thank you for listening to the Swap Society podcast. Swap Society is an online clothing swap for women and kids that makes it easy and affordable to mix up your wardrobe sustainably. We're a growing community of women across the USA who are creating positive change by swapping our clothes and slowing down our fashion consumption. We would love to swap with you. If you're interested in joining, you can sign up at our website. Learn more at www.swapsociety.co. That's swapsociety.co. You can find the show notes for each episode on our website. Please get in touch with us on social media too. We're on Instagram, TikTok, Pinterest, and YouTube for the video version of this podcast at Swap Society. Music is by Joel Korlitz and yours truly. I hope you've enjoyed the show. Please help us spread the word by subscribing, leaving a rating and review, sharing on social media, or simply telling a friend. We really appreciate your support. Have a wonderful day, and remember to swap before you shop.